Today we're talking about the fall of the Roman Empire. This is a nice shot of the first emperor, Augustus. Roman Empire at its height. One of the first things you want to remember about the Roman Empire, no matter what period of it that we're studying, is that when it gets to its largest height, it is huge. It is gigantic. It will eventually become as large as the modern United States, and it will cover most of Europe, North Africa, and some of Asia. Asia meaning Asia Minor, what is today Turkey, parts of the Middle East, specifically what is today Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. And the empire reached its height under Diocletian in the 3rd century, 284 to about 305 CE, meaning the Common Era. It's a nice map of the Roman Empire at its height. So expansion. Is expansion good or bad for a country? Or an empire for that matter? What are some problems that an empire or country might have by being stretched out too far? Have some ideas for this when we discuss this in class. It's a good think about it question. So the decline begins. We're not going to go into the entire breadth of Roman history. It's too long and it's outside the scope of the class that we're talking about, but I want you guys to have a good sense of why Rome falls and what the consequences of it are. So we all know this guy, we've all seen the movie, probably came out year 2000, Commodus, the bad emperor from the movie Gladiator. Well, his dad, who's also in that movie, dies in 180 CE. Spoiler alert, Commodus in the movie kills his father. In reality, this is not true. So, a good rule of thumb is not to believe all the history that you see in movies. But the reality is that Marcus Aurelius does die in the year 180. His son Commodus becomes the emperor, takes control of Rome. Commodus is not a good leader. He's killed by his bodyguard. His bodyguard is called the Praetorian Guard. Those are the men who are responsible for the safety of the emperor. And as we'll see, the Praetorian Guard, this elite, almost ancient Roman version of the Secret Service, was responsible for killing a lot of emperors because they themselves wanted power. And so because Marcus Aurelius was one of the last really good emperors, he dies, his kid takes over, he's not a good leader, there's a long period of disarray that's going to follow, and it's not going to be good for the Roman Empire. So your political problems. We're going to break down the reasons for the Roman Empire's decline to political, economic, and social and military. And right now we're looking at political problems. Poor leaders are going to weaken the government. So we looked at one example of that, Commodus, but over a long period of time, the Roman Empire is going to have trouble picking out really good leaders. Soon there's going to be a lot of fights for power, civil wars, people being assassinated, lots of violence. Officials become corrupt. Corrupt meaning that they take bribes, that they are willing to take money in exchange for giving people positions of power, just doing favors for people. And because there's so much turmoil, because there's so much uncertainty and instability, good, talented, smart, hardworking people are not going to want to be in government. And so you're going to have a situation where lots of people are going to avoid working in politics, and they're going to work in business or just live by themselves because they don't want to deal with all the nonsense of having to fight for power or the possible danger of being killed by someone. So it's not worth it. So all these things are going to conspire to create political problems. Social problems in Rome. This is a nice image of slave labor. We're going to have poor working conditions. Taxes are too great. Rich people stop paying their taxes. And because the empire begins to focus more on what we just saw, the political problems, more on people gaining power, they're going to focus less on collecting taxes. People stop going to school because the government's not working. People have to focus more on their individual lives. And so if you have to have kids help you work. You don't have time or effort to spend on their education, so people are going to stop going to school. The Roman Empire was a slave economy. It functioned because labor was free, meaning that people were forced to work for other people for no money. They were slaves. And so this is a very difficult situation to have in society where you have a whole class of people who are, by definition, the property of other people. And disease. Plague is going to spread throughout Rome and the Roman Empire, killing 1 in 10 or 10% of the population. It doesn't sound like a lot to say 1 in 10, but if you think about 10 people you know, imagine that one of them is dead. And that's true of everything. I know of 100 people, 10 of them are dead. And imagine this is true throughout society. So whether it's government or business or religion or whatever, and this has an effect of really scaring people and creating a lot of inefficiencies in society. And famine. There's not enough food to feed the people. This is a major problem that causes lots of revolutions and decline throughout history, is that people get nervous when there's not enough food. And so that's going to cause another major social problem. Economic problems. Farmers are going to lose a lot of their land because their knowledge of agriculture is not as advanced as it will be in future years, and so they're unable to grow and sow crops. They become out of work. That contributes to the famine that we just talked about. If farmers can't do their jobs, then they can't produce food. That causes social and economic problems. People are going to buy fewer things. Shops are going to close. As people's worlds begins to shrink a little bit, they don't stop worrying about the bigger world and focus more on their day-to-day lives. They buy fewer things and they don't go into businesses and trade that are going to create more money and more financial opportunities for people. Inflation occurs. What does inflation mean? Inflation means rapidly rising prices. The money loses value. This is a hard idea to explain, but it basically means that the price of something keeps going up because the value of the money that you use to buy it goes down. So money loses value because fewer taxes are being paid. It also loses value because the coins they were using weren't of gold or silver. So people stopped believing that they were worth the value that they were being told. Less gold put in, and people find out that's inflation. Okay. To get off on a tangent, the American monetary system is based upon the faith, the idea that American money has value. Back in the ancient world, ancient Rome, money had value because it was made with a certain kind of rare metal, gold or silver or copper or whatever. And if you don't use those things to make the money, then people aren't going to find them as valuable. And we get to have a bartering economy. What does barter mean? Barter means that you trade, that you're not buying something. You're not exchanging goods and services for money. You're just exchanging goods and services for other goods and services. So I might trade grain in exchange for an animal, or I might exchange helping someone clear their field if they help me put up a series of fences. And so that's a trade, that's a barter. Those kinds of economies are simpler than money economies, because a money economy says I have money, but I might not have time. If I have to barter something, I have to have something of value right this minute to trade for it, and that can be difficult, and it can limit the types of economic practices that people can take part in. Finally, no taxes, no money. If there's no taxes coming in, then there's no money trickling down to the people, and the people relied on government services for a lot of things. Military problems. Shot of the Roman legions. Military in Rome was a patriotic service for a very long time. Roman society was based upon the idea that Roman men, to be a citizen, had to fight, had to be part of the Roman army, had to be part of the Roman legions. Over time, Romans get used to the idea of not fighting, of not having to serve, and so the military becomes only fit for mercenaries, people who will fight only for money. People don't want to join because there's no money to pay for the army. So instead of just doing it for patriotism, they're doing it only for money. And so if you can't pay for an army, if you can't supply it, then you're going to have a weak military. Constant threat of invaders on the empire's borders. The empire is huge, remember. When you have a huge empire, it makes it look strong on a map or strong on paper, but it means that they're surrounded by even more enemies. And Rome had many, many enemies. So they had Germanic tribes in what is today Germany, across the river frontiers, up in Britannia. There were many tribes there. In the east, they were constantly on the border with the Persian Empire, lots of tribes out in Central Asia, and so there's a series of enemies that are looking to take advantage of Roman weakness, and they can't stop these border invasions with this weak military. Diocletian, a shot at Diocletian. Another tangent here for you. Roman statues were painted. We only know them as white because over time the paint has come off. They actually, if you had a picture of a statue of a Roman official or Roman person at this time, it would have been painted very colorful with the toga. It would have been a bright red or purple. The eyes would have had life in them instead of just looking like what we're seeing here today. In 284 CE, Diocletian becomes the emperor. Now he sees these problems that we've been talking about, and he thinks there's time for reform. They can do these political changes. They can fix these things. And so he tries to fix some of the economic problems first. He sets price limits. Price limits meaning that you cannot charge more than a certain amount for grain. So if inflation is making the price of things increase, so if the price of grain is going up from 2 to 5 to 10 and it's out of control and people can't pay that, he might say, okay, the limit for grain, no one can sell grain for anything less than 5, whatever the currency is. Okay, and so that would be a limit to make sure that the price stays within the range which people can pay. If the person goes beyond that, they'd be put to death. So obviously there's very little trying to cheat. And workers have to stay on their jobs. So you don't have farmers leaving farms causing a famine. They have to stay and be farmers. Diocletian's going to divide the empire. He thinks it's gotten too big for any one person to rule. So he thinks the only way to save it is to divide it in half. Now his idea is to divide it and have what he calls co-emperors. 2 people who are equal to each other, who will divide the empire and make it easier to administer over time. So he creates 2 empires, the western half and the eastern half. The Western Empire is Europe, North Africa, and the city of Rome. The Eastern Empire is Turkey, Asia, and the city of Byzantium. So 2 emperors, they're supposed to be somewhat equal, but the one in Rome was the senior one because Rome was the mother city. Constantine. Diocletian retires, Constantine takes his place. Now that in itself is unusual because most emperors before Diocletian died in office or were killed. Diocletian gets to retire. And so he kind of did things he wanted to do. He came in, he reformed things, he left. Constantine takes over in the year 312. Constantine does not like the reform of dividing the empire. He thinks that one person can do it. He doesn't lack for confidence, and so he thinks he can do it, so he unites the empire again under himself. He's the first Christian emperor, even though he only really admits to Christianity upon his deathbed. But he does do the Edict of Milan, which says that Christianity will be a tolerated religion. What is tolerance? Tolerance simply means it's not persecuted. They're not being hunted down for believing it. Prior to Constantine, Christians were routinely arrested or beaten or even killed for belief in Christianity because it went against Roman law. Constantine, as legend goes, was converted to Christianity on the eve of a battle, in which he had a dream of Jesus who told him to paint red crosses on his soldiers' shields. And so he did that and he won the battle, and from that point on became a convert to Christianity. And so he proposed the Edict of Milan, which made Christianity an allowed religion in the Roman Empire. He attempted some reforms as well. His main reform was that sons had to follow their father's trade. What does this mean? It means that sons would have to have the same job as their fathers. That way you always have a constant flow of people into necessary jobs. So if your father was a blacksmith, you're a blacksmith. If your father was a farmer, you're a farmer. And so that way they were trying to ensure that these necessary skills were maintained. City of Constantinople. It's a good map showing where it is today in what is today Turkey. City of Rome continues to decline, so Constantine keeps the empire together, but moves the capital from Rome to the city of Byzantium. The city of Byzantium is changed, the city name, to Constantinople, city of Constantine. When the Turks take it over in 1453, they name it Istanbul, and that's what it's called today. It's the largest city in Turkey, but it is not the capital. The capital of Turkey is Ankara. Current day Istanbul. This is the Hagia Sophia, made by Justinian. We're going to study more about Justinian and the Eastern Roman Empire later, but this is a good picture of current day Istanbul. Theodosius follows Constantine. Constantine dies in office 337. Theodosius goes back to what Diocletian had tried to do. He divides the empire in two. And he makes two capitals, the Western Roman Empire, capital in Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire with the capital in Constantinople. So let's just keep this straight. Diocletian divides the empire, but the two emperors are essentially equal. Constantine comes along, reunites the empire, makes one imperial capital, which he moves from Rome to Constantinople. Constantine dies, Theodosius comes along, and then divides it again, with two capitals, one in Rome, one in Constantinople. Rome is invaded pretty frequently, actually. The Western Empire, so remember the part in the west with the capital in Rome, is unable to hold off those German tribes we were talking about on its borders because it has the weak army. The major groups that are invading the Western Roman Empire: Ostrogoths, Visigoths, Franks, Vandals, Saxons. The Goths themselves were a single group, and historians use the term Ostrogoth and Visigoth to describe two different groups. Ostro just means eastern, Visi means west, and so that's how they describe where they settled. So if you're ever forgetting who did what where, Ostrogoths went to western part of Europe, and the Visigoths went more to the eastern part. The Franks obviously are going to settle in France and become French. German tribes, they're looking for a warmer area to live. They want Roman riches and they want to flee the Huns. Let's break this down a little bit. The German tribes that invade Rome are not looking to destroy Rome. They want to share in Rome's wealth. They've been on the border with Rome. They're aware of Roman prosperity, and for the most part, all they want to do is live in the Roman Empire. They want to take part in that prosperity. The Romans want to let some of them in, but not all of them, and they're very happy in some cases to let some of the German men in to serve in the Roman army as mercenaries, but they don't want to let everybody in and have to give services to all these German tribes. And so for a while, some German tribes cross the Roman border, others are kept out. Some German men can join the Roman army, others are kept out also. And so over time, these two cultures, the Roman and the German, begin to mix, and the lines between who lives where become kind of blurred. The reason the Germans want to move into the Roman Empire so badly is not only the wealth of the Roman Empire, but also because a group of Central Asian warriors called Huns are rapidly invading to the west, heading towards Europe. Forget all the images you have of Huns from Mulan. These are, in reality, nomadic people who are pushing against every tribe they come into, and the Germans who are on the border of them are trying to get away. And so as the Huns push west, the Germans push west, and the only place west in Europe is the Roman Empire. So that's why the Germans are trying to get there. The Visigoths, this is a group that the Romans allow to live inside Roman borders. And the deal the Romans make with the Visigoths is that they'll give them land, the Visigoths will give them some military service, and the Visigoths begin to believe the Romans are not treating them that well, so they actually rebel. They rebel against the Romans and they defeat them. I didn't write it down here, but they defeat them at the Battle of Adrianople in the year 379, and they actually kill a Roman emperor. They kill the Roman emperor Valens. And the Visigoths from this point on begin to see the Romans are not invincible, they can be beat, and so they begin to kind of rampage throughout the Roman Empire until the year 410, when Visigoth leader, he's a general, Alaric, captures the city of Rome in the year 410. And so this is like the 9/11 or the Pearl Harbor of its day. It's the thing that wakes up the Romans to the fact that these Germans are serious, and they're actually capturing the capital of the Western Roman Empire. The Vandals are a group of Germans who actually follow the Visigoths into Rome. And when the Visigoths leave, because they don't want to take over Rome, they just want the stuff that they can steal, the Vandals follow the Romans and then take even more stuff and do even more damage. That's where the term vandalism comes from. The Vandals loot the place, take everything of value. That's Vandals doing vandalism. Many more German invaders, so the Franks, the Saxons, the Jutes, the Angles, the Visigoths, the Lombards, the Ostrogoths, all these different groups are going to be running up and down the Roman Empire, and they can't stop them. The Roman Empire is really in disarray at this point. And so a German general, a warlord named Odoacer, actually defeats another Roman emperor named Romulus Augustulus. Augustulus was only a kid, he was probably your age, 14 years old, when he was the emperor, and he's defeated in the year 476. And so that's why we say in this year that the Roman Empire has fallen. 476 CE or AD. The Western Empire is divided. All these German kingdoms are going to take over a piece of the Western Europe. So the Franks are going to settle in what is today France. The Vandals are going to settle in North Africa. The Visigoths are going to settle in Spain and southern France. And so all these different groups are going to settle in areas that used to be part of the Western Roman Empire. And so from this point on, from 476 on, we begin to see not Roman control of Western Europe, but many different German kingdoms that are going to adopt many of these customs of Rome. They're going to still have Roman law. Many of them are going to speak Latin. They're all going to follow the same Catholic Christian religion. And so that's a lot of continuity that we're going to see with this, with the fall of Rome. Odoacer, this is a nice image of his taking of Rome in 476. You can actually see what this image is trying to show us. You can see on the right side the angelic or civilized Romans, mostly women and children, looking devastated, not sure what to do. On the left, you see this dark image of these Germans who show up looking like demons, ready to destroy everything that is good and pure in the world. Obviously, this is not a accurate representation of how these worlds would have looked, but it does show what the intention of the artist here. The Eastern Roman Empire. So the West falls, the East continues. So when we say Rome fell, we mean the Western Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire is going to go on for another 1,000 years. The Eastern Roman Empire is not going to fall completely until the year 1453, when the Turks take over the Eastern Roman Empire. Because people say Rome fell, they have to call the Eastern Roman Empire something, and so they will call it the Byzantine Empire, and that's what the Eastern Roman Empire is known as. But if you'd ask someone from that place, well, who are you? They would have said, we're Romans. They consider themselves the successors, the followers on of the Western Roman Empire. And that's going to conclude our look at the fall of the Roman Empire. We're going to move into the early Middle Ages, but I hope that this was a way for you to understand some of the events that led to the fall of Rome and what some of the major consequences of it were.